All right, welcome everybody. It is Sunday, February 12th, 2023, as we record, and we have a very special guest today. It is Josh from the Founded Earth Brothers. Be sure at the end of this podcast to go to the show description for all their links. They have a plethora of great information that you do not want to miss. I've been following these guys for quite some time, and they're a wealth of knowledge show. I encourage everybody, again, after this podcast, to please check out their social media and YouTube and wherever they post their information. Please help me welcome again from the Founded Earth Brothers, Josh. Josh, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, brother. It's a blessing that you would reach out to us and share our work and testimony with your audience. We appreciate all the work you've done.
We're grateful for your quick response and agreeing to join us today. A day where a lot of people, to be honest, the truth is the furthest thing from their mind. They're worried about the football and everything else. So I'm extremely happy that you're able to join us today.
Yes, me too. Blessed to be here.
So for those folks out there who may not be familiar with you, please introduce yourself and the Founded Earth Brothers, and if you would, a little bit about yourself and your journey to the truth.
Yeah, it's hard to know where to start because it's been such a miraculous and crazy journey. I never in my life would have imagined that I would be believing what I am now and also continuing to work in the world and be a teacher, because we all take pride growing up in how much we can learn and the wisdom we can gain, and we don't realize that while we're doing that, we're gaining the wisdom of this world, and it goes against what the Bible's telling us, what the Father's been trying to tell us the whole time. And I was very fortunate that, I was able to get an education, go on, get my master's degree, which was a miracle of itself. And then after getting my master's degree, I thought, this is awesome. I'm getting wiser and wiser. I'm a teacher. I finally got into a science teaching position, and everything was going good. But deep down, I knew I was just sound asleep. You can sense it. We know something's off with the given narrative and with reality. I was already a believer. I'd already had miracles happen in my life. A really powerful miracle happened around the age of, I was 25, and just super powerful, that let me know that the Father is real. He's far more loving than we're being told. And that miracle guided me to be a lot more humble. However, as time goes on, we get distracted and we lose sight of just the path that we should take. We kind of get caught up in education, chasing the job, doing all these different things, and marriage and kids and survival, trying to survive. But I think it was around, I'm trying to think, it's about 6 years ago, my mother got diagnosed with cancer, and they told her, you've got 2 months to live, you're going to die within 2 to 4 months if you don't do chemo. And so that was one of the things that got me praying yet again. It had been about 10 years or so since I had just prayed really hard, needing a miracle. And here comes this loving Father hearing my prayers, and I just asked him to speak to my mom, because when she was in pain, of course, when we're all in pain, or, we're told news like that, we think we're being punished. We deserve to die.
Sure.
This wrathful Father just wants to punish us. And, I asked him, I said, just speak to my mom, like you did to me. Show her that your will is not for her to die. Death is the enemy. And like clockwork, the next day she texted me and said, God spoke to me. And she changed the route she was going to go, and started seeing another doctor, and of course they talked her into doing the chemo route, and I'm against that, like many people in the truth community are, and knowing what it is. And so I just prayed that it wouldn't impact her at all, that she wouldn't feel it, that it would be like Paul when he was bit by the serpent, that it would not have any effect on her. And sure enough, not that I'm anything special, but with his mercy and his compassion, she never experienced the side effects at all or any pain. She actually looked better and became, eventually, not long after, was in remission. And that's what really humbled me enough to ask a question that, if anyone out there hasn't asked this question yet, I encourage you to be careful if you ask the Father this, but I asked him to show me the truth about creation. I said, I don't care how crazy it sounds. I just want you to show me the truth about creation. And I asked that it brings glory to you. And never knew when I asked that I would find out the next day that the world is literally, just like it states in Genesis, immovable, and there's a firmament above it. And it just it took me down a not just like a path of faith where I'm believing in all this stuff. It really shifted my scientific view from just believing and learning all things to proving all things. And so, like a mad scientist, you go to work and I'm drawing stuff out on the board. I'm a biology teacher, so we've got evolution. I was already into destroying that narrative because it falls apart pretty easy when you start doing some digging. But from there, it's been quite the ride because the Father showed me the firmament, the footage that we have of it, and I asked him. I said, you're showing me all these things. Send people this direction so that they can see it and that it give glory to you that you deserve. And yet again, why he's listening to me over anybody else, I have no clue. But the next day, thousands upon thousands of people commenting, subscribing, coming to the work that we were sharing on YouTube, and it was just, it's been a blessing ever since. There's a lot of little details in there I'm leaving out, but it's been quite the journey getting to where we are now, worldwide. I mean, reaching people worldwide is something I never would have imagined. You always kind of think, how can I spread the truth? Let me start a church. But I knew from the beginning, I asked, what do you want me to do? And I could just picture that whole get in a little building and reach 20 to 30 people idea just not being the vision he had for me. So it's been crazy, but it's been a lot of fun seeing the proofs that we have that our Creator is as awesome as the Word says He is. And actually more so than the words can describe on a page. You can't really get the full picture in a book. You have to experience it yourself.
That's an amazing and powerful story. We talk about, man. Now, did you come across the biblical flat earth first and kind of share it with your brother, or did you guys kind of experience that together at the same time?
I actually had to experience it first because when I experienced it, you get this excitement. And I remember thinking, like, how do you bring this to somebody's attention? How do you just go out there and say it? And the first person I told was my wife. And she looked at me like, okay, be careful. You might be losing it a little bit, But she just said, be careful. And I said, I'm being careful, but I'm telling you it's true. And I called my brother. He was the next person I called, and I started telling him. And fortunately, back then, you could find really good videos. And so I talked to him on the phone about it, and he didn't really say much. He kind of got quiet, and because he and I are really close. I mean, we're twins. We've been together. We've just always gotten along. We've always been like best friends. We rarely ever fought, and so we have a special kind of bond where he actually heard me out. And when I saw him, I showed him a video, and it was a really good video. And after that, he was like, "It's true, if the Bible says it, and we can prove it, it's true." And so he just jumped right on board, and it's really cool how we've been able to work together. And he never even really made videos until I forced him to and said, look, you need to try it. And he made the final card video on our channel, and you're seeing that play out in real time now. I think yesterday, I don't know if you heard the news about the object being shot down over Alaska.
The deception is coming, isn't it?
I feel like, what if this is it? We're kind of thinking, we've been warning people for years, but what if it's finally here? And or just something to get people's hopes up and more mystery. And the mystery is what gets people looking, and they don't even have to really say that it's a UFO or aliens. They just make it mysterious and make people think they're discovering it themselves, and they'll believe it even more.
Absolutely. Now, your brother, he's actually, he has his own podcast now, and he's really delves deep into the biblical side, right?
Yeah, he's got a channel, Grace and Truth Fellowship, where he talks about more of the dark side, the demonic side, and the biblical side of things. And he does a lot of more. He wanted to keep it separate from what we do on Founded Earth Brothers, because back in the early days, it was mostly the immovable world, the firmament above, right, that type of stuff, the proofs of it. And so he wanted to keep the biblical stuff separate because a lot of people just aren't ready for that. And so he wanted to have that for people that weren't quite ready for that truth yet. And so he started that, but he hasn't done it for a while. He's had a lot of crazy things going on in his life too. So I'm hoping he'll get back into that. Definitely has a calling, and I've got my wife as well, who she's a big part of everything. She doesn't come on camera very often. She kind of stays in the background and just if I have a question, I ask her, because she's like this brain. She's really good with calendars and history and remembering stuff, remembering Bible verses, and so she's kind of the Bible app that I use when I'm doing my research.
That's awesome. And I've interviewed a lot of people on this podcast, and this one, the Flat Earth Files, has only been going on for about 90 days, but we've already, part of my mission is I just want to bring listeners on to share their stories. And one thing I've noticed that people who are awake, it's normally you and your wife. It's the same with me and my wife. We're very much on the same level. We watch your videos, David Weiss and the others. We share the same beliefs, the biblical flat Earth. But that's something that I find very interesting, that most of the couples or the people I interview, their spouse is right on board with them the same. I want to ask you one question before I start diving into particular subjects. Why is flat Earth such a stigma within the truth community? Why can we talk about 9/11 and even aliens and bases on the other side of the moon? We can have a conversation about that. Why can't we within the truth community just have a nice conversation about flat Earth? I had 2 radio shows on 2 different networks, and I could talk about everything, but if I talked about flat Earth, I would lose my entire audience.
Yep. Yeah, I believe it's 2 things simultaneously, with one of them being the spiritual side of things that we don't see because of where this wisdom is coming from, these doctrines of demons that are just deep-rooted into us. I mean, it's one of the first things we learn, and a lot of kids don't have memories beyond the age of like 6 or 7. I'm fortunate that I do, but a lot of people don't, and that's when we are really just forced to see things as reality before we can prove it, before I could look, before the internet. A lot of us with our generation, there was no internet. If they put a picture of a globe on the cover of my book, which I remember the original Blue Marble was on history books, science books, every book they could put it on, they were, and it was it's still in the walls of classrooms at where I work. But it was something that I saw it and I thought, wow, that's it. That's what we live on. That's proof. These adults that care about me, they're teaching me this. They believe it. It has to be true. There's no way they would lie. And they weren't lying intentionally. And I think that's how it just got so deep rooted, is you have all these people who are just wanting to be wise and don't realize that it's worldly wisdom and that it's foolishness to the Father, just like the Bible said it was. They don't know exactly what that means. And I didn't know exactly what that means until I came to this, how foolish we really were. And I think the spiritual aspect is what gets people so angry, and the lies that the enemy's planted in their head about what we believe is a big thing we have to battle. They picture this small disc with a light source way up high, and all these images just make them angry at us because they think we're that dumb. And it doesn't matter how, it's weird because it doesn't seem to matter how smart you are or how intelligent they thought you were. When you tell them that, they're like, okay, now you're dumb. No matter how much they know that you've been educated or what, like, they don't care. They're just like, you're really dumb. And I think that's kind of how, when I look back to my perceptions, I never really saw a lot of things about flat Earth before I came to it. But I seen someone in the comments of a video say something about satellites over a flat Earth, and I remember thinking, this guy sounds like a flat earther. And I remember just instantly thinking, this is probably some guy who's stoned all the time, some new ager who's just like, bro, it's flat, because
Right.
I did a lot of drugs. Like, that's the kind of image that came to my mind. So I'm sure when people hear it, I mean, the programming has increased since those days. I mean, that's all you see when you hear about flat Earth, is that we believe in a flat disk and it's just floating in space, and the kind of the Logan Paul imagery that they put out, that they all the controlled op uses the same imagery. They always put the flat disk in their thumbnails. Like, it's, and they have the same animators. I mean, their thumbnails all have the exact same, they put their picture in the thumbnail, they have the disc in the background, and they have a white outline around them. It's always exactly the same. Like, they want you to just kind of get that goofy imagery that none of us believe in. So I think the firmament's key to erasing that. Once they hear about the firmament, they're like, wait, what? Because you don't even, I never say the word flat earth when I talk to people anymore about this. Like when we had some people come over, they were Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was trying to minister to them and talk to them about the creation. I mentioned the firmament several times and talked about it, and I think it's almost like people are blind to it. They just kind of look at you and nod, and they don't really like investigate it or think any deeper than what you're saying. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad the way on my other podcast how I presented it. And it's funny, the first expedition down there in the in the early 1900s was at the USS Nimrod, which Nimrod
Wow.
just happened to be involved with the whole Tower of Babel thing. So
Yes.
and then you fast forward up till was it 77 when Wernher von Braun died, and he just happened to leave Psalms 19:1, and then in between. Operation Dominic, which you can look at the meaning of the word Dominic, and then Fishbowl. It seems to me they were trying to intentionally blow a hole through the firmament.
Yeah, and it's interesting how when they did that, then it was like, well, that didn't work. Now let's just guard this area for decades. Like, and no one's really cared. It is really like a giant Truman Show set to where people just. It's too cold down there. Don't worry about it. Can't go there. Can't explore there. We have a treaty that expires, the 2040 something. Like, it's weird. Why they choose their timelines, and all of that. Like, I don't know what's going to happen by then, but I'm sure they've got some plan. However, I feel like we're really close to the millennial reign. Like,
I do too.
the shift is about to happen. Like, we're getting close to that seventh day on the creation.
Yep.
Charts when you look at it and map it out with each day being 1,000 years. It's like I feel like a year or two away, but I could be wrong with the calendars. I never like to pick a date, but I think we're close.
I do too. This is kind of out of order the way I wanted to discuss things, but since I just brought up Operation Dominic and Fishbowl, however long ago, 4 years ago, I kind of came across some material that was saying that nuclear missiles were a hoax, and like everything else, I'm like, oh, I mean, come on, this is one conspiracy too far. Just like when I first got an email 4 years ago saying, can I come on your show and talk about flat earth? I hit delete.
Yeah.
And that's one thing going back. I try not to be too hard because I was that guy one time, right? I didn't pay any attention to the words flat earth. However, we talk about the constant fear porn. They like to keep people under. It's 24/7. This, that, the other thing, Russia, Ukraine. For the last 3 years, it was COVID. And here's the thing for me. If nuclear missiles is man's way of saying we can destroy Earth when we want to, where I think the only person, and in order for revelations and all the prophecies to come true, we just can't, they always say we have enough nukes to destroy the world 7 times over. So, and we'll get into satellites and those things, but what are your thoughts on nuclear missiles as they present them? Obviously, there are such things as radiation sickness, etc. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that they do have powerful bombs.
Agreed.
And they can do some destruction, but they're not like globe killers like that we've been programmed to believe, where they can just wipe us all out. And I think that's why, like when von Braun died, he was saying they're going to create these false threats so that they can weaponize space. And to me, that becomes the new nuclear threat. Now we have things pointed down at us. We have to walk this fine line. And they don't have to really be there. Now, they can really make stuff come down. They really do have weapons, I'm sure, that can really scare people. And who knows who it's going to be, if it's going to be Russia or China who's got them and controlling the world now. Like, it's all about fear. And we saw within the past few years how powerful of a tool fear is, and how easy just these tough generations of people that I looked up to, I'm like, man, these people were awesome. They were alive in the 60s and 70s, and now all of a sudden this tough generation buys into the fear. That's really eye-opening that it's such a powerful tool, and all they have to do is, pay a few news reporters to say the same thing over and over and over, and people are going to believe it and buy into it. I'm sure we're not, but, being silenced and having the difficulties we have, it's going to be a challenge to battle that. And I feel like that's right around the corner because just like, I don't like to put all my faith in what a man says, but so far everything that von Braun warned about before he died, this Nazi NASA scientist, has come true. I mean, it's everything except for the alien card. So it's interesting to watch this unfold, and I do think it'll be a lot like the nuclear threat where people were digging holes in their backyard and making bunkers. Like, would have been scary times, believing all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Reagan kind of dropped that in his speech back in, I think, 86 or 87 when he was talking to the United Nations. He said, it could take something like an alien invasion to bring us all together, as a world. And here we are 35 years later, and the news keeps dropping it in there, trying to plant that in the back of the people's mind, as well as, everything else. I always say the truth in Hollywood lies in the media, because they, everything that's happened, just look at the movie Contagion and look at everything they tried to push on people the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It's something.
Fascinating. I mean, interesting times, but it's just sad. I think about my children growing up, and I'm like, I would really love for me to have had them earlier so that they grew up before all of this. It would be weird being a child growing up now in this world with
it's sad.
All this being pushed.
I kind of wanted to shift gears a little bit. I know you speak often in your presentations about some of the books that were not ultimately canonized, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, etc. When did you first come across these books, and when you're talking, how is this? How should I ask this question? Is this something that you think that should have been canonized, and to people who are firm it's either in the Bible or it's not in the 66 books? How do you present that to people?
Yeah, it's not easy. People are real big on, like it's not canon. And when I started investigating this stuff, it challenged me to really look deeper, not to really question the Word, the Bible, the books that we already have, right. But to actually see how did they choose them? What were the books, along the way? Because in the 1600s, the King James Bible had more books in it. When you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, there was books in there that we don't have today, like Enoch and Jubilees. And so I'm thinking, if these people were reading these texts BC and they're quoted in the modern day canon, maybe we should just look at them. And so I think it's important to look at them and compare them to what we already have. And a lot of people have done that with Enoch and Jubilees. And the thing with Enoch, people will say, well, there's Enoch 2 and there's Enoch 3, and they try to group them together, which is wrong, because Enoch 1, well, they only call it Enoch 1, not because it's part of 1, 2, and 3 as a series, but because it's the original, and they want to keep it separate. So historians would say, okay, this is from First Enoch, which is the one that was with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then you have later on Enoch 2 and 3, which I don't believe are, should be considered scripture. They were way, way after, and I haven't really investigated them yet, but from what I can tell, from what people have said, they don't match up and they came way later. But the ones with the Dead Sea Scrolls, what's powerful about them and why I like this book so much is that it literally tells you in the beginning of the book that it's for a later generation. So it tells you that, and it also has prophecies of the globe model, the heliocentric model in I believe it's chapter 80. There's a prophecy of this model, how this deception will happen, how the chiefs of the stars that we now call planets would leave their orbital paths, and that a generation of sinners coming up would take them to be gods, and then here we are. They're all named after gods, these planets. And those were the things that I remember learning about and being so proud and coming home and, Mom and Dad, I can sing the Order of the Planets, like it brought it into our hearts and our imaginations, and it was all over every cartoon we watched, the Jetsons, space travel, Star Wars. Like, they really, and when you look at the things the unclean spirits say, like in Aleister Crowley's book that he has, they want to bring that into our hearts. They say that's their goal, to bring the stars into the hearts of men. And the Book of Enoch not only does that, it destroys a lot of false teachings. It has descriptions of the Messiah that I've never seen before, and that it clear up so much. He's right there with the Father, and Enoch's going, who is this? Who is this with the Ancient of Days? And you go through and read those descriptions, and it's powerful. And there's a 10-week prophecy in there as well that tells us when the end's going to be on a timeline, and it matches up perfectly with that 1,000-year period that we're about to approach, and that seventh day, so to speak. And my wife's really good at breaking that down. She looks at that and she understands numbers way better than I do in the timeline, and so it's really cool. We were studying that yesterday, and the things that she brings to the table with that is amazing, because the timeline is really important, and I feel like that's why we need to start really ramping up our efforts like you're doing, putting out podcasts, putting out information, trying to reach people who have no clue what's right around the corner. And it has a lot of the truth would be easier to receive if they knew what we live on, because it makes the rest of the Bible make sense. You know, every eye seeing the Messiah never made sense to us when we lived on a globe. Even though I'd had miracles happen when I believed in the globe and thought I understood everything quite well, I would ask my wife, how are we going to see the Messiah when he returns, everybody? And you have to make up excuses for the Bible to fit your worldview and say, oh, it's things like technology. We're all going to have iPads, or somehow it's going to be possible. But the truth is, we're all going to see him, because this world is not at all what we've been told, and there's a firmament above us. And so that's sort of my take on it. I think Enoch is should be considered something we use to understand the word, and but the thing is, the word canon, a lot of people don't understand that word. I never understood that word, but if you put all your faith in that word, the word canon, that's the same process they use to canonize saints. And if you're not familiar with that process, it's weird. This is straight out of Rome. This is not like modern day, like real believers doing these things. These are people who say that you have to pray to a dead saint or a dead person, right, that was a pope or whoever, and you have to pray to them, and they have to have two miracles happen, which is literally necromancy. You're talking to the dead, which the Bible says not to do. They have to have two miracles confirmed by the pope in order for them to become a saint, and so they're considered canonized. And so that if that word there is where people like draw their line in the sand, they need to realize that that's also what they use to canonize saints. I'm not saying that those books of the Bible can't be trusted because of that, but just that the same people who were making those decisions made the decisions of what is considered canon. And the Father has preserved his word. The words that we needed for the time being are in there. We have the truth, the essential truths of creation, who his beloved Son is, and everything we need to know is in there. But I feel like it paints a better picture of why the Messiah was talking to demons and asking them, what's your name? And why they knew who he was, how they knew their time was coming. Like, all these things make sense to me after I read the book of Enoch and then went back and read the book of Jubilees. Like, it's stuff that'll help you out if you're studying the Bible to understand a lot of the events taking place.
Obviously, with the Bible, there's dozens and dozens of versions now, King James, NIV, excuse me, on and on and on. Can you recommend a particular place if somebody wants to read Enoch to make sure they get the actual version?
Yeah, that's the challenging part, because I have the Dead Sea Scroll version, and I compared it to the one that I had, and it's fairly close. The online versions, there's a couple different ones, but there's one that I bought or that I had gifted to me from Sean Griffin. Kingdom in Context is his channel, and if you go to any of his videos, in the description there should be a link. And his book, it's color-coded to show you where it matches up with Scripture. So you can look at it, and it has like anything in a certain color. I forget the colors, but if it's like light blue and you see a light blue code, that shows you it's the Son of the Most High. If you see red, then it's talking about the Most High. If you see anything, it's color-coded. The entire Scripture is color-coded to match up with the Bibles we have now. So you can see and kind of go back and look and see where the timelines match up and everything. And it's a really good one. It's from Kingdom in Context. I think it's called First Enoch. I have to look it up real quick. First Enoch, a Scriptural Study Guide. I could be wrong. Let me make sure I'm not wrong on that.
Yeah, no worries.
Kingdom in Context. Here he is. But yeah, it's a really good tool. He gave that to me, and I can send you a link too.
Yeah,
but that one's a good one, just because it shows people the connections of the book of Enoch and how it connects. Yeah, it's One Enoch Contextual Study Guide, and you can find that on Amazon right now. One Enoch, a contextual study guide of Scripture, and it's awesome. It's worth the purchase because it'll compare everything for you and answer a lot of questions, like it did for me.
That's awesome. And I assume that's when you sat down and started to go through Enoch, etc. Is that when you really started to look at the Nephilim, or was that something that you had already been looking into?
I hadn't really been looking into that. For me, my passion instantly was the firmament. And I'm like, I know it's there. What proof do we have of it? And I was actually listening to an audio version of Enoch as I was falling asleep one night, and you hear all these different things. And first I heard the prophecy about the globe model, and then I was listening, and it was talking about these stars rising up to become lightning but not losing their form. And I thought, now that sounds science fiction. There's just no way. I'm starting to I was kind of skeptical of Enoch at first. I'm thinking I'm not going to put my trust in it. I'm going to pray for discernment. And when it said that, I was like, wow, that's just kind of science fiction. Well, then I'm watching this little documentary by Nova where they're filming above a storm. They fly above the clouds, right? And they're trying to film what's called lightning sprites. And so they're pointing their cameras up at the firmament, thinking it's the sky, thinking it's deep space and all of that. Well, they see these massive explosions coming down from, over 70 miles up. And in their, they don't really have, these things are mysterious. They don't really have really good footage of them. There's only a few photographs because they're so fast. But they had really special cameras. And so when they film it, I'm watching the film, and I remembered that verse where it said some stars rise up to become lightning, but they don't lose their form. And so you would see stars like twinkle, and then an explosion. It looked like fireworks shooting out of water, but I adjusted the brightness, and you can see a wave just move across this barrier, and it looks like a wave on the ocean. I mean, just a ripple. And then you see these things shooting out, and it brought me right back to that book of Enoch where it was talking about that star rising up, almost like it just smacks the firmament, or a part of it, because there's multi-layers, and you just see that ripple effect and then an explosion coming out. And they say those are the lightning bolts, when they actually produce, if they ever do connect to the ground, I mean, those things are the ones that make trees explode. Like, they're extremely powerful. And I looked up the word sprite because they call them lightning sprites, and that word means disembodied spirit. I don't know why they would give it that name, but that's what they call them. And so that was my first time seeing the footage of the firmament, and then you can slow it down, brighten it, and you can see it. And the crazy thing is, that video we put out about it had like 300,000 views in a week. They took it down and said, due to copyright, we're not, this is,
wow.
It was just gone. And I was really devastated, and so I altered it, and I tried to put it out a different way. And all of a sudden, one day, that video comes back that had been censored. And I thought, how did it come back? I've never had a censored video all of a sudden be viewable. Once it's been blocked in your country, it's blocked.
Me either.
And it did, and so it freaked me out, and I thought, what's going on? And so I clicked the original video. Nova deleted their video that they had of these sprites. They took it off the internet.
Nice.
Why would they do that? Why would they delete a historic
right.
They risked their lives flying above a storm in a plane and had historic footage, and they deleted it. That's raising some red flags right there. Like, why would you delete that footage? And that there to me shows me they realize what they have, and they don't want people studying that footage. I mean, this is Nova, a trusted science program. They weren't showing us computer animations; they were showing us real footage. So they had to take it down. It's very, very interesting.
That's amazing. Is it still up?
Yeah, our firmament footage of it's up. You can't, I guess the original footage, since it's down, and somebody may have downloaded it somewhere else on YouTube, or you can try to find their Nova's original footage, but actual Nova themselves, they don't have that footage. So it's good to download that stuff while you have it, because there may be a time where they scrub the entire internet of this stuff to where you can just, we're only talking about it, and who's going to believe us? And even people that can see it still don't believe it. I could show it to them, like, here's footage of the firmament. They're like, oh, that's CGI, and I'm like, no, don't play our card. That's ours. We own that card. But yeah, it's really, to me, the fact that they're deleting that, what else did they do? They've done something else recently with the videos, but it's something that tells me that there's something there. It's not just something in our atmosphere that there's a wave on, and I don't know. To me, it's the most powerful footage I've ever seen.
That's amazing. It's hard for people to discern some things. We talk about the numbers. The big one for me, 93 million miles away. I don't know how anybody can look at the sun and say, "Yep, that's 93 million miles." It's right there.
Yeah, it never made sense when you can stand outside and feel the difference from 8 in the morning on a hot day in South Georgia. I'm in northern Georgia now, but like that sun at noon, I know it's close.
Yeah,
like,
right above your head.
There's no doubting it's right there burning you. Like there's no millions of miles of vacuum, and like you said, the numbers are something we never paid attention to either. I don't know how, but were you ever exposed to the numbers for curvature when you were in school? Like, here's what the curve formula is?
Oh, never.
Yeah.
No.
See, that doesn't make sense to me. And were you ever was the idea of a firmament ever brought to your attention in church or school?
Never.
Yeah. See, to me, that's sketchy. Like, for one, I don't know why church wouldn't be talking about this all the time. It's almost like, oh, let's just keep that, hidden. And school, they always talked about falling off of an edge. They never once said, oh, the ancient ancestors believed in a firmament like they did. Even the great Christopher Columbus that had, proved the earth was round, I was told, by sailing around the globe. He was quoting the book to Esdras, or the fourth book of Ezra. He was quoting it to get funding because it mentions more land out there, that the world is divided into so many parts. And it also mentions the firmament being founded on the waters. So he's quoting a flat earth book that we don't have in our modern day Bibles. It was in the original King James, but he was quoting that to get funding to go explore. He did not say, I believe there's no edge and it's a sphere. He's quoting a flat earth book and getting funding to go on this adventure because they knew there was no edge. They knew that they would eventually run into a firmament. They weren't worried about slipping over the edge of a flat disc. So, they should have. That should be part of school curriculum and history, the firmament, that our ancient ancestors believed in it. Mr. Old Columbus, that we have a day off work for every year, he believed in the firmament, or he at least quoted a book that believed in it.
A hot topic of conversation on this podcast amongst our listeners, many truthers homeschool because it's just... it's really hard to find a decent school. Obviously, with COVID, the Zoom thing started. A lot of people were like, what is going on in our schools? The figures I saw, I think homeschoolers in 2018, it was, I think, 2% of the population. And there's some numbers out there saying that it's 6-7%. It's tripled since the whole COVID narrative and people kind of, saw what was going on in the schools. But even so, there's a lot of faith-based online curriculums that are out there, but still, when you get to the science and the history, they still go, it's not biblical. Mm-hmm. And then, again, like you said, they don't touch on the firmament or anything like that. Is it possible to ever get a true faith-based content out there where you can include, like, I have no problem like saying, hey, this is how they teach in the public curriculum, and this is the truth, because I think it's important to know, to say, hey, this is what they're saying out there. Obviously you don't want your kid to say, what, we went to the moon, right?
Yeah.
Old TV show, what, we went to the moon? Mm-hmm. Dumb and Dumber. But I think we talked about this prior to the podcast. I don't think it was after we went live, but kind of the disappointment with the church, especially when COVID hit. Everybody was quick to close their churches. And, just like you said, they don't talk about the firmament, that the earth is stable, the four pillars, and these type of things. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really have. It's been on my heart to create something, because I go to work and I see, like I can design my curriculum when I'm teaching biology and we discuss evolution. I can design it to show the truth of intelligent design. You have to be crafty, though, and I've been blessed, wise as serpents, that type of approach, to be able to do it in a way where I'm not. I mean, and I'm kind of risking my job. If I was to have somebody walk in while I'm saying certain things, I could. But I got in trouble for talking about in videos. I had a small little channel before the one I started now, and I was maybe 25 subscribers. I'm just starting to put out videos about biblical false teachings and evolution. And you could have the evolution theory just fall apart. And I was looking at that evidence. And so when I got in trouble, I asked him, I said, I should be allowed to talk about the fraud. If there's fraud in the evidence and the standards say, look at the evidence, I should be allowed to say, this is fraudulent. And if you see pictures associated with this, it's a lie. And they said, okay, you can say that. And so I've kind of taken that and ran with it. I do a whole segment on the fraud, and it's in my notes. And the main goal for them is for you to say common ancestor. For every EOC that I've ever seen, that has been the answer. If there's an evolution question, you don't have to read it. You just say common ancestor. You just look for that answer. That's what they want you to pick. What does this evidence prove? What does it prove? What is the fact that these fake drawings here look similar, these embryos? What does that prove? And they want you to say common ancestor. And so seeing all of that and the way that works, it's really motivated me to create a curriculum and new standards that are creation-based, that people can get out and see that there is proofs that this rock formation is not millions of years old. We have things that form within several years that they say would have taken millions of years. I go over the Mark Armitage discoveries where he has soft tissues that he found on these giant bones that we're told are dinosaur bones that are millions of years old. He finds soft tissue on these things when he dissolves them. And this guy has like just a couple thousand subscribers, on YouTube. And nobody shares his work. It's not worldwide news. He got fired from his university when he made these discoveries. And so I share these with my kids, and I let them know this is new discoveries. We're studying evidence, and they get excited. They're like, what? This is new? I said, yes, this is brand new evidence. We didn't have this evidence when I was in school. We were told that these things were just rocks, fossils. They were millions of years old. And I said, this guy found evidence that they are younger than they're at least thousands of years old. And not only that, he did cross-sections of the bones and found evidence of clotting in the bones, which indicates that these organisms drowned. And he found that on every single continent, these organisms drowned. So whatever they were, dragons, Nephilim bones, we don't have a full set of them. It's almost like there was a clash of titans that caused them to die because their bones are scattered everywhere. And we really didn't start finding them until they invented the dinosaur
story.
Yeah, narrative. So it's like you look back to the Book of Enoch again. You see that these the Nephilim were forced to fight to the death, and they became disembodied spirits. Well, who's going to know where their bones are and be able to direct somebody? Hey, here, find this bone. Other than a demon, they're going to be able to tell these people who are, part of their royal societies, Freemasons, whoever it is, that are pushing their narratives. Hey, here's where you need to dig. Here's this giant femur that's bigger than a person. Here's this, right? And they can find these things. And like the largest one we have, they call it a Titanosaurus. Like they're literally rubbing it in our faces that these things are from Titans. These things are from those legends, so to speak.
These pre-flood, right?
Yeah, pre-flood. And so the proof starts when you start going over it, and you can put that into curriculum and show, use this new evidence, use the evidence that we have, expose the fraud. The fraud should be something we would need to let the kids see, because if evolution were true, we would not need fraud. We would be on a mountain of bones to get from a mass extinction 65 million years ago to 5 billion known species. We would be having like 76 new species every year. And we would be studying evolution with a time-lapse photography. We would be talking to each other and going, hold on, my ears are getting longer. It would be ridiculous to get to where we are, even with their timeline. You can use their timeline against them. It does not work. And life, that's the cool thing about life. That's why I really got fascinated with biology, is I had the miracle happen to me, which brought me to a greater appreciation of intelligent design and our creator. And so the fact that It's 2023, allegedly, and we cannot make life. I can give any scientist all the ingredients, all the cell parts, and say, here, make it alive. They can't do it. They cannot take the parts needed and make a living organism. We can alter it. They have all these little things that say, oh, we made the first synthetic cell or whatever. But when you go back and look at what they're doing, they're taking existing cells and just altering them. We cannot make it. It's that complex. It requires a force, a breath of life moving everything the way that it goes. I mean, the code that we have shows that we have an actual programmer who's programmed it. I mean, we're programmed. We have code that tells us what to do. I mean, when you, like right now, this is what's really cool. This is fascinating to me. If you were to go donate blood, your body is going to produce the right amount of blood, right, to replenish that.
Right.
Where does that blood come from? Because blood cells don't have a nucleus. And you look and you see it comes from your bones. Like that, this, when you look at, if you were to look at the anatomy, would you think that your blood comes from your bones?
No, of course
just does. It seems impossible.
Right.
But it comes from your bone marrow, and it gets into your veins. These blood cells comes from your bones, and you go back even further in time when you were about the size of an apple seed. You didn't even have bones, but you had a heartbeat. You know, you had blood pumping. Like this stuff, it's miraculous. Our intelligent designer created us in a way that we can do these miraculous things, and that we could have a pulse when we're that small, and we don't even have bones yet. What's pumping through our hearts? You know, like it's really cool. Like it fascinates me that we have no answers, but we're forced to put our trust in what people say that still also have no answers. Because we cannot figure out life. It's just that complex. We can't replicate it. We can't figure it out. And that's why I like teaching biology, is because we need animations. It's kind of like if I went and worked at NASA, I would need a lot of animations to
You would need a whole lot of animations.
Yeah. So
that's why Walt Disney and Wernher von Braun became friends, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you'll see. Go back to a biology textbook. It's mostly animation. It's just like space, because that's how complex we are. So
that's really interesting. Along that note, isn't it interesting? The people in, I guess, the churches and religion who were pro-vaccine, who again, you know, God made us perfect. He made creation perfect, but they were pushing a magical elixir that there's no such thing in this world. Where one thing works for everybody. Was that a little disheartening for you to see as well?
Yeah, it was. It was really disheartening, because you have a lot of people, and especially being in education, there's everyone almost. There was only me, my brother, and like one other person, or maybe two other people, who didn't fall for the whole go get your vaccine. They show up with like vaccine buses, you know, like at your school, like tell all the kids they can come out and get it, and our teachers, every one of them got it, and I'm seeing the side effects of that. We have perfectly healthy, I mean, guys that like run marathons, like having heart problems and passing out. Like we had a coach that was, you know, along the same timeline, just passing out in the middle of the field, just blacking out, falling down. They can't find out what's wrong with them. They don't understand. They're just like, your heart's not doing right. You know, we don't know why. Everything should be good. You're a healthy guy, and it's devastating seeing people put their faith in something, and especially the science teachers, because we teach about messenger RNA. They know the implications, but they see a commercial that says, oh, it just kind of dissolves out. No, that's not how we teach messenger RNA. Messenger RNA is a big deal. That's where you start getting your proteins from, and your proteins are what make you who you are. You know, it's all about making proteins. That's sort of the dogma of biology is, you know, your DNA, then you have your messenger RNA, and then you have essentially your, you know, it's transcription, translation, and it's all about making proteins. And it's cells make copies of themselves. So if I have a cell that's making proteins, and that cell makes a copy of itself, now I have two cells making spike proteins. Once those cells make copies, now I have, you know, 4, and then 8, and it just keeps going and going and going. And so I think that's why it's taken a little bit longer. It's taken a couple of years almost for you to start seeing the real bad side effects, is because these people have allowed messenger RNA, and I find it interesting that we call it messenger RNA. I had a subscriber, bring this to my attention. They said, think about it. They always called angels messengers, and now we're putting messenger RNA into our bodies, and we're told it's going to be like the days of Noah in the end, and that's what they were doing in the days of Noah, putting messengers mixing with people, and so we have that coming full circle, and it's been tough to watch, and people are mad now at the conspiracy theorist for not saying enough to them to warn them now that they're having their side effects, and we couldn't say. When whatever we did say was censored, we were getting shut down. Like, I couldn't even talk about it on YouTube. Even videos where I bleeped out the word vaccine and I bleeped out the word anything that had to do with that, they would still shut those videos down, and give you a strike. So I had to just take them off my channel. It's something that it was worse than Flat Earth. They censored it way worse than that, which is I didn't think was possible, but somehow they did. So that was a big, I think, awakening for a lot of people to see that, and it actually woke up a ton of people. I think it kind of was counterproductive to them. It ended up waking up a lot of people that were asleep.
I agree. I've mentioned that a few times. I think they overplayed their hand with COVID.
And now Pfizer sponsors Satan worship.
Oh, my gosh. We don't watch any TV, but I think Mark Dice or somebody had it, and I went back and looked, and literally it's like they're having a satanic ritual, and just like on cue, sponsored by Pfizer. I'm like, okay, now it all makes sense. They're telling you.
Mm-hmm. And you don't sponsor something unless you know what it is,
They sponsor the news.
Mm-hmm.
And they sponsor, anything that's just evil like that. Kind of just for another minute, staying on the vaccine agenda, do you think it's simply eugenics, them trying to get down to, remember the old first law of the Georgia Guidestones, trying to get it down to 500 million, or do you think there's something more nefarious to it?
I think it's the same things. Like when you go back to the Bible and you look what they were doing in Egypt before the people were set free. They were like, these people are outnumbering us. We got to get rid of these people. There's so many of them. They're going to cause us a lot of trouble if they were to revolt. Like, we got to get their numbers down. And so they were just going directly after the midwife, saying, "Hey, kill these children," when they're born. And so I think it's kind of like that with the legalized child sacrifice, abortion. They've got quotas. Like, I heard a former Satanist. He said, they were asking him, "Where do you guys work? Like, you Satanists, like, I know, are y'all teachers, lawyers? Like, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, there's some teachers, but," he said, "a lot of us will work at abortion clinics to meet our child sacrifice quota." And I thought, dang, that is dark. That's way darker, because the Book of Enoch says that the smiting of infants in the womb, a.k.a. abortion, was taught to us by the fallen. That's one of the things they taught mankind, was how to kill your offspring before they're born. And so I think that it is going to, I think it's a mix of that. And I think that's one of the reasons why they took down the Guidestones, is because you see in all these people dying, and right there something saying, hey, we're going to maintain a population at this certain number. And maintaining means you've already brought it there. You've already got it down to that. Because even at the point when these things were made by Freemasons, which is interesting that they were made, we found out they were made by Freemasons. And,
hey, Josh, hang on just one second.
Okay, I got you.
I apologize, folks. We had a little glitch in the system, but we're back. We were talking about the Georgia Guidestones. And, Josh, you said it was twofold. One, you did think it had to do with trying to keep it at 500 million, but what was the other reason that you think the vaccine was used for?
Yeah, it's a lot like the biblical times. One, you've got Egypt, where they're reducing the population right before they get set out of there. When Moses was being born, they were literally trying, the king made that decree, hey, we're going to reduce the population. I mean, it was known to remove the children of Jacob, or the children of Israel, and to reduce their populations. And so that was happening right before they got set free. And I feel like you're seeing sort of a return of that. And not only that, mixing messenger RNA, which is the same, almost reminds me of angel RNA. And so they are doing sort of two of the same. They're trying to reduce the populations, and also mixing, corrupting of all flesh. The same things that these unclean spirits fathers taught them to do, they are replicating that. They're doing the exact same thing now. They're going to try to corrupt flesh, make it to where all the food we eat has been genetically modified,
Right.
and things like that. And so that's why the people that have secret societies, which is what we were talking about when you lost signal connectivity, so you gotta be careful. These secret societies exist, and they are in every city, I think, in America. I mean, every time I've gone to a city, they have their little headquarters where they are usually pretty close to a courthouse and a police station and all that. But those groups, those secret societies, funded this Guidestone project, and it's on the land right now of a person in that same secret society, and it just happens to be the same secret society that 11 of the 12 moonwalkers, people that walked on the moon, they were a part of it. I mean, the coincidences start to stack up there. But once that information got out that they were the ones that funded it, as well as the Rosicrucian Society, they played a part as well. And they have some dark origins and whatnot. But they're keeping secrets, and they're building things that have to do with population control. And then all of a sudden they take it down, which I don't find the timing of it accidental at all when you start looking back at. We did some videos about it, which is weird because I was talking about it a couple years ago. And once I found out, there's a documentary, I think it's called Dark Clouds Over Elberton, where they were looking into the Guidestones. Yep. Mm-hmm. And they found out who it was, and it was the Masons and the Rosicrucianists that helped get this thing going. And so the, what was it? Trying to think. Oh, there was a block placed into the top years ago, like 9 or 10 years ago, that said 2014. And well, when that happened, 2014 came and went. Nothing, and everybody thought, okay, so that was just coincidental. However, when these Guidestones came down in Ethiopia, they're on a different calendar.
That's right. They're about 8 years behind us, right?
Yeah. It's 2014. It was 2014 in Ethiopia when the Guidestones came down. Now it's 2015. They have their new year September 11th most of the time. like nothing weird about that. So I think there's something to that calendar because they use more of an Egyptian-inspired calendar.
Right.
And I think that goes back to Babylon, Egypt, sun god worship. I think it's all interconnected because these Guidestones were put where they were because of the positioning of the sun. And it all ties together, and that's why understanding what we're up against is extremely important, knowing how desperate they are to go after us. They will lie to you, these unclean spirits, and act like they're good spirits, kind spirits, and when they do have the alien deception and they're trying to get us to communicate with these things through artificial intelligence and whatnot, they're going to try to pose as being kind. And that's why they've made it to where we're in love with the whole ET aspect of aliens, and the ancient aliens is I mean, I just remember being a kid who didn't love E.T. and want to have their own little E.T. experience with an alien coming into your house.
Oh, it was amazing.
And, yeah, it was so captivating. We never really thought of it as harmful, but it's pushing that same narrative that we're starting to see now. I'm interested. I've been looking in the news to see where they're going with that object, but they're kind of making it, even though it should be this story that's talked about every second. I haven't seen articles come out since yesterday, so it's weird. They're wanting the mystery to increase.
Yeah, that's interesting. I find it interesting the day they chose to blow it up, July 6th, which is George Bush's birthday.
Oh, wow, yeah. And it was right after CERN did their thing, too.
That's right.
Was CERN July 5th or July 4th?
It was the 4th or the 5th, because I remember it being just about 24 to 36 hours after the CERN incident.
Yeah, and people were like, oh, is that connected? Well, you look at, where it talks about in the Bible where Satan dwells. Have you seen that verse?
No.
Where it talks about where Satan dwells. This is what is weird. When I was doing all the connecting the dots on this stuff, where Satan dwells, it says, where my martyr Antipas was slain, where he was killed. Where you look up where he was killed on the internet, it tells you near Geneva, Switzerland. And that's where they tell you where Satan dwells, which is like, is that a coincidence too? Like, how many coincidences can we have, before we're just literally looking at the Bible as a history book and saying, okay, this is not a coincidence. This is what the Bible tells us. These people have these underground portal things set up, and they're a lot like NASA. It's the same when you look at who is behind these organizations. It's the same world powers. They're almost identical. Like you can look and like line them up and then highlight the ones that match. And it's almost identical, and they do the same thing. They get billions of dollars, and what do they give us as proof of what they're doing? Animations. And so it's the same. I mean, it's the same cut and paste thing, and it's these bright, brilliant scientists doing it. And so it's got to be something special, you know. And so it's the same. It's all connected. I think CERN, NASA, the Guidestones, all the secret societies—they're all working together for the same purpose. You can tell, and they're not keeping secrets because they're planning a surprise party for us that's going to, you know, just give us all this good stuff. They are keeping secrets because they are unclean spirits guiding them. Mankind is too dumb to pull off the deceptions that they've done so far on their own.
Indeed. That's really great stuff. Excuse me. I had something on Switzerland. Yeah, it's funny. People talk about, you know, the city of London, Washington, D.C., and Rome, of course, the Vatican. People say nothing happens in the world unless one of those three areas have a say. However, I've done a lot of podcasts and I did a lot of research. And before you blew me away with that verse, I've been saying it seems to me like the root of all evil comes from Switzerland. And it's amazing how it's portrayed as this nice little place with snow-capped mountains where you can go skiing and, you know, the old... the girls with the pigtails and everybody's happy and cheese. But
Yeah.
when you look at the history, especially over the last 120 some years, the World Zionist Organization began in 1897 in Basel, Switzerland. Of course, the international banks, the IMF, and of course the Bank of International Settlements, the Rothschilds, that's where the hub of money is. That's where the internet.
Yeah.
I believe that is where the internet is controlled. Like they could literally throw a switch and shut us off if they want us to. So, you know, people talk about DC, London, and the Vatican, which obviously there's a lot of evil within those three entities. But there's something to Switzerland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fact, and I think somebody said they changed the article, the one when you went on YouTube to find this stuff, that said that Antipas was martyred and killed, you know, and it goes into detail about it, or it did. They say that they changed it, and it no longer says he was killed there near Geneva, Switzerland. But I haven't done any research to fact check that. But I thought it'd be interesting if they did alter the algorithm so you can't pull that up anymore to see and make the connections of that Bible verse that says where Satan dwells is where this person was slain, because that would give you a really good insight into where he actually dwells.
Absolutely.
On this earth.
A couple more things, and again, thank you for being so generous of your time. I know we got about 10 minutes or so left, and again, apologies for the technical difficulties. Going back to the distractions that has been going on, do you see kind of an end game here in the coming years as far as not as far as the rapture, the complete end, but do you see them going for a big push for this one world government, whether it be they set things off in Eastern Europe, obviously Iran, Israel's having problems, Russia, Ukraine, or do you see, is there a chance that they actually push this Project Blue Beam type of agenda on us?
Yeah, it's weird because I felt like that by now we would have already had the Blue Beam stuff going on, and something with how we just kind of came out of that intense like persecution with the pandemic stuff. I feel like they're going to do that again and reboot it, but it's going to be more so with the climate change, the fact that they went up on Mount Sinai and had their little commandments about climate change and a day of rest. And I believe that's when you're going to start seeing people who are trying to keep the Sabbath and do all these things. Now you're going to be forced, kind of like they were back around the time they were making the creeds of Nicaea, when the Council of Nicaea, when they were making the creeds, they were, if you were anyone trying to keep the Sabbath, you were considered a Judaizer. You had to do it on Sunday, which was the day of the sun. They were kind of trying to merge a lot of the pagan stuff with the early believers, and they were really successful. But I feel like you're seeing a shift of people start to go back to that, and now we're going to have here's what we have to do. We have to shut everything down. Your average typical person is probably not going to be able to travel with certain. It's going to be really like they're going to put a lot of restrictions, and they're going to blame everything on climate change, and a lot of the stuff I feel like they're doing themselves. Since I noticed, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but since they started spraying the skies with geoengineering, they call it, it's gotten a lot hotter. The Bible talks about it getting hotter in the last days, but I think they can cause their own greenhouse effect.
Sure.
If you trap the heat. So I feel like it's going to be more of that. That's just my suspicion, or my, I guess, intuition is telling me it's going to be more of a similar to the same type of persecution with the take the vaccine or lose your job. You'll have to do certain things, or you won't be able to work. You'll have to. I don't know. I really don't know exactly how they're going to play it out, but I think that'll be going on, and they may also be doing the whole early stages of Project Bluebeam, and we did find something mysterious. It was because now they're calling it an object. They're not going right out and saying it's a UFO. They're saying we shot down a flying object,
Right.
And we're going to look for the pieces, and it fell on ice, and it's up here in Alaska, and the way that they're saying it, you could tell they're reading the script, and they always give them that limited information, but I'm really curious to see how this little whole object in the sky plays out, because I don't know. It would be really, really weird if they started doing Bluebeam right now, and then after Bluebeam started doing the climate stuff. I don't know which order they're going to put things in, but they're running out of time, and I think they sense that, and they have to have better insight onto the true calendar and know that we're approaching the seventh day, or how close we are. Are we a few years off on our calendars? Are we 10 years, 15 years? Like, I think they would know. That's why they've altered the calendar so much. And you look at the area that they choose to divide, and it seems to be Christianity, with the 45,000 denominations, the hundreds of translations. Like, they want to make it really hard to find truth in that one particular avenue. So that's why it's good for us to do our due diligence and research this stuff, because you had asked earlier what's like the best translation of the Bible if you're going to do all this, looking at Enoch or anything. And I highly recommend using online resources. I don't really stick to a certain Bible. I usually use tools like Bible Gateway, or Bible Hub's a good one. You can pull up the interlinear and look at the different words and whatnot, and see the original words, and see if someone's sticking to that, or if they're changing the stuff altogether, and try to be more familiar with what biblical scholars have came to conclude on certain verses, because there's so many different ways they've tried to divide and alter the word. And I don't want people to say, well, we can't trust the Bible, but just study it in more detail. Study it while you're praying. Pray that the Holy Spirit would guide you on things, because if we try to do it on our own, we're going to get lost. And there's so many teachers out there and false teachers. You really need to arm yourself with the gift that we have, the Holy Spirit, which says, we don't need another teacher. We've got the Holy Spirit to show us things. And, Jesus said, don't call any man rabbi or father. And I think if you can eliminate those two influences and go to the true Father, it'll help clear up a lot of confusion that you have when you go to the Word and start looking into this stuff.
That's really well said. And to all the listeners out there, I know a lot of us, including my family, we were affected. My wife lost her job. She was she is a registered nurse, but she was given the ultimatum, jab or job, and obviously we weren't having that. So, but you just got to live with strong convictions. And of course, if you think that, I believe, obviously 2020 and 2021 were difficult, but we persevered. We're still going strong.
Yeah.
And but things are going to get more difficult. We homestead, we raise chickens, and there's already whispers coming about where they're going to try to put an end to that, because it's dangerous because of the bird flu and all these things. So I always tell people, if you think that was bad, I think they have more things up their sleeves in the very near future. They want us to depend on them for everything. They want the 15-minute city. They want the carbon credits. And that way, when they get the digital dollar, the 15-minute city, and all that stuff, like you said, if you do not comply, they just completely turn you off, and you go hungry, you starve.
Yep. That's what the Bible tells us is going to happen. So it's going to happen. Sadly. I mean, it's going to get bad, but we have to endure. That's why it says endure till the end, endure. There's that enduring aspect, and it's not going to be easy, but take joy, because it's the end result for them is the second death, and for us, it's not. We have eternal life.
Amen. That was a great insight by you, and you've been very generous to your time. So I would like to give you the last thought on today, and of course, don't forget, we'll put in the show description all the links to social media and where you can watch Josh's and his brother's videos. But we definitely want to give you the last word here today, sir.
Yeah, well, I thank you so much, George. It's been a blessing. And those of you out there who have yet to fellowship with us, I highly encourage you to, once you've subscribed, I hate to put out those memos all the time of click the bell and do that, like a lot of YouTubers do, but make sure you are coming back and checking. So many people subscribe to us and they think we just quit making videos, and they come to find out they were just unsubscribed or something like that. But even if you don't believe what we believe, it's okay. Earlier on in the early days of our ministry, I was targeting people that were atheists, who were blinded by certain lies. So we had a lot of people come over who didn't believe in the flat earth, and that was okay. We're not a channel where if you don't believe just like we do, we don't want you there. We want to learn from each other.
Sure.
And share things. I read literally every comment that I have, and it's hard. It's hard to do that, but it's been a blessing. I learn from people, and we got to humble ourselves and constantly learn. So when I do stuff, I don't classify myself as a teacher. I'm just a researcher, and we are all in this together with our research and studying and just teaching each other as much as we can while we can on this platform. And so when those days go away, it's going to be a little tougher to spread truth, but that's when we become more dangerous, because we're going to be taken to the streets and really kind of stepping outside of our comfort zone. So right now we're blessed to have podcasts and people like you, George, that are going out there and taking the persecution and all the slander that follows when you put these things out there. So yeah, humble yourselves and come over and join us, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot of fascinating things that we still haven't talked about or touched base on yet. Controversial stuff, but pray about it. If it's something we say that you really think makes you angry and you want to attack, pray about it first. Pray about it, research it, hear us out, and we look forward to anyone who comes and joins in the fellowship with us.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much. God bless you and your brother for what you do. It's the Founded Earth Brothers. Josh, thank you so much for your time today, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, hon, we really need new phones.
T-Mobile will cover the cost of 4 amazing new iPhone 15s, and each line is only $25 a month.
New iPhone 15s? Best new year ever.
Get 4 iPhone 15s on us with eligible trade-in when you switch to T-Mobile.
Minimum of 4 lines for $25 per line per month with autopay discount using debit or bank account. $5 more per line without autopay, plus taxes and fees. Phone fee at 24 monthly bill credits for well-qualified customers. Contact us before canceling account to continue bill credits or credit stop and balance on required finance agreement due. $35 per line connection charge applies. See T-Mobile.com.
Hey, hon, we really need new phones.
T-Mobile will cover the cost of 4 amazing new iPhone 15s, and each line is only $25 a month.
New iPhone 15s? Best new year ever.
Get 4 iPhone 15s on us with eligible trade-in when you switch to T-Mobile.
Minimum of 4 lines for $25 per line per month with autopay discount using debit or bank account. $5 more per line without autopay, plus taxes and fees. Phone fee at 24 monthly bill credits for well-qualified customers. Contact us before canceling account to continue bill credits or credit stop and balance on required finance agreement due. $35 per line connection charge applies. See T-Mobile.com.